the bank of the Volga. Soviet soldiers have taken up a position in a strategically important house and are defending it by any means necessary. They resort to various stratagems in order not to surrender the object to the enemy. The confrontation lasts for 58 days, stretching out as if for years. At the head of the group of Red Army Sergeant Major Afanasiev and Senior Sergeant Pavlov. This event will be remembered in history as the unsuccessful capture of Pavlov's house. And as Marshal Chukov would later say, during the defense, as many Hitlerites were neutralized as were killed in the capture of the whole country France. Separately, I would like to note that the Red Army men suffered far fewer losses. And because of this it is especially interesting what the Soviet soldiers used to resist the enemy and did not surrender their positions. Although the Nazis were many times more numerous, the most prestigious house in Stalingrad is the Pavlov house, where in peacetime lived party workers and engineers, together with their families. When the Germans invaded there, an event better known as the Battle of Stalingrad, the surviving buildings became important strongholds, and every one of them is worth its weight in gold, including Pavlov's house. In his book, The Battle of the Century, the aforementioned Marshal wrote, "All the value was in the city's remains. They helped to break the battle lines of the attacking Hitlerites, because of what they had to go along the streets of the houses. And we had the advantage of surrounding them and destroying them, so for every such object and there was a confrontation not at all for life. But it was Pavlov's house that became a stronghold, there were no other objects near it, so to give it to the enemy would have been the gravest mistake capable of putting the entire battle of Stalingrad on the line. Too good a view opened in both directions from it. Defense is paramount. Pavlov's house was under the control of the Red Army. The defensive works were started, one could fortify as much as one could. And thanks to the fact that the soldiers literally stayed awake for days and nights and reinforced, the house became a real, impregnable fortress. After only a few days of taking control of it, it was possible to dig trenches leading to neighboring buildings. Communication with the neighbors stationed near the Volga was also established. Each apartment became a firing point for a quick change of position, so that the enemy would not have time to detect where it was being showered with a hail of lead. But it was also problematic to approach the house, all paths were mined. There were also machine gun emplacements near Pavlov's house with the sole purpose of firing on everyone in the front. But what was the real secret of the defenders? It is logical that Russian ingenuity was involved. Otherwise, none of the 58 days of defense and the subsequent retreat of the Germans from trying to capture the point would have been out of the question. As soon as the bombing started, nobody was in Pavlov's house. Only a small fraction of the soldiers, those on whose shoulders was on duty. The rest of the soldiers were literally missing. They went down into makeshift bomb shelter. And the Germans, bombing this point, sincerely thought with each round they had more and more steps to put under the remains of the house of the Red Army soldiers. However, the hatch of the water tunnel found there and the trench dug to it turned into that very bomb shelter. The Germans could not get the Soviet soldiers from there. All defenders were completely safe. The building and sentries, yes, suffered. But it was impossible to leave the control point unattended. But that was not the only trick our troops resorted to. The Pavlovites were launching decoy rockets. The fact is that there were enough ruins in Stalingrad, and the Nazis used colored rockets, fired them at a house to mark it from a bird's eye view for further bombing. But the fired missiles of the same color from the Red Army literally did not let the pilots understand where exactly they should shoot. Later Pavlov in his own book, In Stalingrad, will write, "Thanks to this stratagem only a small part of the bombs reached our present position. A good portion of them fell on the positions of the Germans themselves. Even when they deliberately changed the color of the missiles, we would regroup and repeat the trick again. But there was one more secret of the army's men in the person of Anatoly Chekhov, a sniper. True, he was not permanently stationed in Pavlov's house, but dropped in periodically, preferring to take inconspicuous positions immediately after the bombardment. He managed to mow down quite a few enemies, shooting 12 to 20 targets at a time.